Welcome to the hardest working committee in the Nevada State Legislature, the Assembly Committee on Government Affairs. Will the Secretary please call the roll?
Assemblyman Carter.
Present.
Assemblyman DeLong.
Present.
Assemblyman De Silva.
Here.
Assemblywoman Duran. Assemblywoman Gonzalez. Assemblyman Gurr. Assemblyman Hibbets. Assemblyman Koenig. Assemblyman MacArthur. Assemblyman Nguyen. Assemblywoman Taylor. Assemblywoman Thomas. Chair Torres.
Welcome to the audience joining us here in Carson City, those joining us via Zoom or via the internet. Just a couple of housekeeping items. Please remember to silence your electronic devices. If you wish to testify, please sign in at the table at the door and provide a business card to the committee secretary. For those joining online, please be sure to mute your microphone when you're not speaking to minimize any background noise. When testifying, please turn on the microphone and clearly state your name, spell your name, and state your affiliation, if any, for the record. Then turn the microphone off each time you're done speaking. Handouts should have already been provided to the committee staff. We expect courtesy and respect in our interactions during the meeting, even if you do not agree with another person's position. Committee members will be using their laptops to view handouts and other documents. Please do not view this as a sign of disrespect or inattention. Public comment will be taken at the end of the meeting. Each person will be limited to 2 minutes. In addition, the public may submit written testimony to the committee up to 24 hours after the hearing. And we are going to start today with a work session, especially because the agencies waited so patiently the other day, and then we had to postpone. So we're going to go ahead and begin today with the work session, and then we will go into the bill. So at this time, as a reminder, we're going to conduct a work session and take action on measures the committee has heard in previous meetings. It is not customary for the committee to take testimony or otherwise rehear the bills during a work session. However, I may invite a witness to come forward for clarification or questions during consideration of a measure. We're going to go ahead and start with SB 2.
Thank you, Chair Torres. This is Jennifer Rudy, Committee Policy Analyst. As LCB staff, I do not advocate for or against legislation. I'm just going to walk you through the work session document. Senate Bill 2 clarifies that under certain circumstances, the Chief of the Division of Emergency Management of the Office of the Military may activate the State Disaster Identification Coordination Committee or a subcommittee in preparation for an imminent emergency, disaster, public health emergency, or other health event. The bill also makes certain reporting by healthcare providers mandatory during such emergencies or events. Finally, SB 2 requires the committee to share the information from reports submitted by healthcare providers with the county or city upon request for the purpose of reunification or identification services. There are no amendments for this measure.
Members, are there any questions? I will entertain a motion to do pass SB 2. I have the motion from Assemblyman Nguyen, a second from Vice Chair Duran. Members, any discussion? All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, say nay. This motion does carry, and I will assign the floor statement to Assemblyman Hibbets. We'll go ahead and continue with SB 3.
Thank you, Chair Torres. This is Jennifer Rudy again. Senate Bill 3 requires the governor to appoint the director of the Department of Public Safety or his or her designee to the Nevada Commission on Homeland Security. There are no amendments. Thank you.
Members, any questions? At this time, I'll entertain a motion to do pass SB 3. I have the motion from Assemblyman Taylor, and I have a second from Assemblyman Gonzalez. Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, say nay. This motion does carry. And I will assign the floor statement to Assemblyman Taylor.
Thank you, Chair.
And we will continue on with SB 8.
Thank you, Chair Torres. This is Jennifer Rudy, Committee Policy Analyst. Senate Bill 8 designates criminal investigators employed by the Division of Child and Family Services of the Department of Health and Human Services as Category 2 peace officers. There are no amendments for this measure.
At this time, I will entertain a motion to do pass SB 8. I have the motion from Vice Chair Duran, and I have the second from Assemblywoman Thomas. Members, any discussion? All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, say nay. Motion does carry. And I will assign the floor statement to Assemblywoman Thomas.
Thank you, Chair.
And we will, next we will go ahead and continue with SB 16.
Thank you, Chair Torres. This is Jennifer Rudy, Committee Policy Analyst. Senate Bill 16 revises the Charter of Carson City to require the Board of Supervisors to realign the boundaries of City Council wards whenever reliable evidence indicates the population of a ward exceeds any other ward by more than 5%, or the population in a ward exceeds the population in any other ward by more than 5% as determined by the preceding national decennial census. The measure also clarifies the term of office for members of the Board of Supervisors, extends the time period by which the board must adopt or reject an ordinance, and provides that the mayor pro tempore shall fill a vacancy in the office of mayor for the unexpired term of a former incumbent. Thank you.
Members, are there any questions? I will entertain a motion to do pass SB 16. I have the motion from Assemblyman DeLong. Do I have a second? I have a second from Assemblyman Taylor. Members, any discussion on the motion? All in favor, please say aye. Any opposed, say nay. This motion does carry, and I will assign the floor statement to Assemblyman DeLong. We'll continue on with SB 18.
Thank you, Chair Torres. This is Jennifer Rudy, Committee Policy Analyst. Senate Bill 18 requires each planning commission in a county whose population is less than 100,000, currently all counties other than Clark and Washoe, to hold at least one regular meeting in each quarter. Each planning commission in a county whose population is 100,000 or more, currently Clark and Washoe counties, must still hold at least one regular meeting in each month. There were no amendments on this measure.
At this time, members, any questions? At this time, I'll entertain a motion to do pass SB 18. I have the motion from Assemblyman Nguyen, and I have the second from Assemblyman De Silva. Members, any discussion on the motion? It doesn't appear there's any. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, say nay. This motion does carry, and I will assign the floor statement to Assemblyman Nguyen.
Thank you, Chair.
I will continue on with SB 21.
Thank you, Chair Torres. This is Jennifer Rudy, Committee Policy Analyst. Senate Bill 21 revises the classifications of populations in certain provisions of Nevada revised statutes, and there are no amendments for this measure.
Thank you. At this time, members, any questions? Then I will entertain a motion to do pass SB 21. So moved. I have the motion from Vice Chair Duran. Do I have a second? I have the second from Assemblyman Nguyen. Members, any discussion? All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, say nay. This motion does carry, and I will assign the floor statement to Assemblyman Carter. And we'll continue on with SB 25.
Thank you, Chair Torres. This is Jennifer Rudy, Committee Policy Analyst. Senate Bill 25 requires the State Public Works Division of the Department of Administration to implement and maintain a long-term plan to address the future need for suitable office spaces for the departments and agencies of the executive branch of state government. There were no amendments on this measure. Thank you.
Members, any questions? At this time, I will entertain a motion to do pass SB 25. I have the motion from Vice Chair Duran, and I have the second from Assemblyman Gonzalez. Members, any discussion? All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, say nay. This motion does carry, and I'll assign the floor statement to Assemblyman Koenig.
I just said this is the dumbest one ever.
Did you really? And next, we will consider SB 87.
Thank you, Chair Torres. This is Jennifer Rudy, Committee Policy Analyst. Senate Bill 87 authorizes a position in the classified service of the executive branch of state government to be filled without competition by a person who meets the minimum qualifications for the position and has successfully completed at least 900 hours of service in an AmeriCorps, Youth Conservation Corps, or Job Corps program in the state within the 2 years prior to applying for the position. The hours of service must be directly related to the position applied for. There were no amendments.
Members, any questions? At this time, I'll entertain a motion to do pass SB 87. I have the motion from Assemblyman Taylor, and I have the second from Assemblywoman Gonzalez. Members, any discussion on the motion? All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? This motion does carry, and I will assign the floor statement to Assemblyman MacArthur. You're welcome. And lastly, we will consider SB 169.
Thank you, Chair Torres. This is Jennifer Rudy, Committee Policy Analyst. Senate Bill 169 requires the master plan in a county whose population is 100,000 or more, currently Clark and Washoe counties, to include a heat mitigation element. The bill also sets forth the requirements for this heat mitigation element, including a plan to develop strategies such as cooling spaces, public drinking water, cool building practices, shade over paved surfaces, and urban tree canopies. There were no amendments on this measure.
Thank you. Members, any questions? At this time, I'll entertain a motion to do pass SB 169. I have the motion from Assemblyman Nguyen, and then I have the second from Vice Chair Duran. Members, any discussion? All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Opposed. Please say nay. Nay. Thank you, Assemblyman MacArthur. Let the record reflect Assemblyman MacArthur is a nay. This motion does carry. I will send the floor statement to Assemblyman De Silva. And that does conclude our work session for today. Just a note to committee members, I expect that we'll be having several work sessions next week as well. I'll make sure that I communicate with you all when I have an idea what bills we're looking at for next week. But it's safe to say we're going to be looking at bills we've already heard. At this time, one-minute recess. Yeah, we're good. The Assembly Committee on Government Affairs will reconvene. At this time, we'll invite the proponents of the bill to come and do the presentation. I will open the hearing on SB 208, which requires counties and cities to enact certain ordinances relating to battery charged fences. Thank you. And we expect this to be a very electrifying presentation. Clearly, that's our word of the day. I definitely expect some charged arguments, but when you're ready, you may begin.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and appreciate the icebreaker to help calm my nerves so I'm not too shocked by the views in front of me. I'll do the best I can with the puns. Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the committee. AJ Delap with the Griffin Company here today representing Amarok. To my left, I have a representative from Amarok as well, Michael Pate. He'll be here for the technical questions if there are any of those that he can enlighten you all with. I was working for electric somewhere in there, but I couldn't find it. Didn't come to me. Today we're presenting SB 208. Appreciate proceeding on this morning. Essentially what this bill does is it addresses certain issues that local governments are having permitting electric fences and as they relate to alarm systems. And we understand that it's an interesting technology and concept. What these fences do is they create an electrical charge, very low voltage, not life-threatening in any way, and more of a discomfort to those that brush up against it. It's to prevent folks from deciding to climb over a wall to get into secured areas. So picture a fleet yard with multiple vehicles or whatever the items might be within that perimeter. In this day and age, catalytic converters are a big deal. So you could have a fleet behind those walls, and this has happened in times where a fleet has been hit and as many as 25 or 30 catalytic converters have been taken in one night. So one of the options to protect that commodity would be to install one of these alarm systems that incorporates an electric fence also. That electric fence would have signage all around it so that it's clear that what the fence does and what the potential is. However, it's not from ground up. There's a standoff wall in front of it, so that would prevent persons from inadvertently brushing up against that electrified fence. So if you're walking your dog in an area, a commercial area or industrial, and maybe you tripped, brush up against that, you would not brush up against the electrified fence. You'd brush up against a normal fence or wall that is not energized. So there's no, that's to prevent any issues along those lines. So that's a brief description of it. We could certainly go into detail with the committee would like. What this bill does, though, and the question that I would get when I would talk to the legislators, and I think I've spoken to every one of you, is why does this need to go into NRS? It's to help create the guardrails for the local governments to authorize and permit them. It gives standards that are internationally accepted for what the safety features need to be, and it provides a path and a conduit for the local governments to permit them so that they can be brought into the communities and help the constituencies there. And in a nutshell, that's why it's going in NRS. We think it's quality legislation, and we urge your support on it. And at this time, we're happy to entertain any questions if the committee has any. Thank you.
Thank you. Members, any questions? Assemblyman DeLong and then Assemblyman Thomas.
Thank you, Chair. Over here. I guess I wasn't charging you enough. Are there problems in counties with getting these types of fences permitted?
There have been problems. Sometimes they're authorized and sometimes they're not. It just depends on the circumstances of the community. Because of there's not specific clarity involved in how to permit. There's not a particular section that planners and those entities within the government can point to help them permit it. And that's the point of this. So sometimes they're approved in the same jurisdiction, sometimes they're not. And so the inconsistency is a struggle for the company and other companies that have similar products. This isn't specific legislation that corners a market into Amarok, but it does create legislation that allows for the local governments to permit these type of security systems.
Thank you. Assemblywoman Thomas.
Good morning, and thank you, Madam Chair. And thank you for the presentation. I just, my question actually is sort of like a novice question. As a resident, can I have this, in my surrounding household, to prevent anyone from, invading my privacy?
This is designed for industrial and commercial areas primarily. There is a conceptual amendment that I will address here in just a moment for rural areas that are more residential, but they're large plots of land, that type of thing. I think what you may be referring to, Assemblywoman Thomas, is your neighbor in my kind of a neighborhood where we share a tight wall. You know, I kind of feel like when they're barbecuing, I'm with them, whether I want to be or not. We're not going to, this legislation does not allow for that type of residence to be to receive this type of system. This is commercial or industrial in certain residential areas that are more rural in nature.
And thank you for that clarification. I wanted that on the record. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. And, you know, I had heard that there was a possibility of an amendment, and we did check, and I don't see one posted on Nellis. So if there's a conceptual amendment, first, if after this hearing, you could please make sure we get that out to committee members and post it on Nellis. But then second, if you could just go over what that amendment is. Thank you.
Madam Chair, I apologize. It doesn't appear that the amendment caught up with the committee, so I do apologize for that. I can speak towards that. So if you reference the bill, page 2, section 1, line 6, or subsection 2, if you follow down, to line 8, and this, may I add, was language that was brought by City of Henderson, and I would like to also mention that they did a great job of working with us so that we could get to a point where we're both in agreement that this can proceed without opposition. But back to line 8, zoned exclusively will be struck, and in there will be the wording designated by the county. And then for the section involving the municipality, designated by the municipality. And then if you continue on to line 9, where it stops for residential use, we are going to add in language that reads, unless such property is located in a rural zoning area or is governed by the provisions of NRS 278.780 through 278.828. So 278.780 through 278.828. And what that does is that brings in the Tahoe Regional Planning Area, which is more of a rural residential area where there's these large plots of lands. So what that language does, and if I can just describe it, is it captures the county, captures the cities, and it also captures the Tahoe Regional Planning Area so that they can authorize these systems.
Thank you for going over that. And I think that amendment might have brought quite a few more questions. Okay. So I believe on my list, I have Assemblyman De Silva, then Assemblyman Taylor, then Assemblyman Carter. And then I'll go back to DeLong. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Hopefully this question isn't too jolting, but so when it comes to the actual warning signs, so how is that going to look like on these fences? Is there like a certain distance where you have to have a sign put in place every 3 feet, every 6 feet? And how large and visible will these signs also be? Thank you.
Thank you, Representative. My name is Michael Pate. I'm with Amarok. I'm the Director of Government Affairs for Amarok. Yes, there are signs. The signs are about this size. They are bright yellow. They're spaced every 10 meters. In our world, since we live in America, that's about 30 feet. They are in English and Spanish minimum, have the international sign for shock as a warning to it, and we put them all over the country like that. We currently publish, I think it's like 36 different languages. So, yes, there'll be warning signs up.
I appreciate that. And if we could see language that maybe codifies that too, so that would be a requirement, just in case there were other competitors. Obviously, I see that there is language requiring that the signage, but specifically those details, and I think the size of those, and it seems you're already doing it.
And Madam Chairman, when we reference the standard, the IEC ANSI standard 60335-2-76, if you want to look it up, you'll put yourself to sleep. But it basically codifies the energizer, for the power and output on the energizers, the pulse, the separation, the signage, everything is included within that standard, so everyone has to operate in that standard.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that. And I'll go next to Assemblywoman Taylor.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for the presentation. I have a question. I noticed in the amendment to this, it went from may to shall and went from authorized to require. Are we trying to vote them into compliance, or why did that change?
The long or the short is of it, or AJ Delap on behalf of Amarok, we need to urge local governments to do it. It was by making it statewide, we create the guardrails for creating the ordinance and the county code for authorizing the construction and operation of the fence. So that gives a level of comfort, in my opinion, to the local governments that if it meets these standards, then we can authorize it. And at the same time, it urges the local governments to incorporate these standards into their ordinances and code. So that was the prompting of it. It changed from may to shall just to require the local governments, which sometimes they need to be, I can't put it any other way, to do that so that these products can be brought in for the constituencies that live in the communities. So that's where the wording came from.
Okay, may I follow up, Chair? Thank you very much, Mr. Dunlap. A follow-up then. So in situations where there is no fence right now, do they have to go back and add a fence?
Yeah.
Yep, if you-
Michael Pate with Amarok. Yes, that's included in the standard. The standard tells you that you must have a minimum of a 5-foot wall or barrier up before you can ever install these devices. So there's always a dead wall or perimeter, and this goes behind it as a second device. So the alarm device goes behind that.
Okay, so if I may though, but does this, if there is a situation where they do not have
This cannot be installed.
okay, so they have to have the wall there.
Have to have a wall or a fence or a barrier.
Do we have situations where they don't have an electrified fence right now, but then this will require them to put one in?
I don't understand your question.
Meaning, like, I'm thinking more like, say, in residential areas, if they have a fence there, maybe it isn't electrified, or whatever, is this going to make someone? I mean, they're going to have to go in and put in a wall now, is what it sounds like.
Yes, you have to. And that's a safety precaution in a rural and in an urban environment. Even though these are safe, reliable, they're not going to harm anybody, you don't want accidental touching. So that's why you have the barrier up. So if there's not a barrier there, no, you cannot do it. If it's residential, no, you cannot do it, except for the exception that AJ mentioned a little earlier.
Okay, thank you very much. Thanks for the clarity. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. At this time, I think I have next Assemblyman Carter.
Good morning. Yeah, my question is, and it may have been answered, but I'm just trying to make sure that I understand it. We're having a big problem, and I think they're having it up here also, but down in the Las Vegas Valley with, with the evolving means of predator control, where we're seeing lots of home video of dogs being taken by coyotes and bobcats and even mountain lions in certain areas. In fact, we have one that made it earlier in this session where there was a coyote wandering around UNLV. And what I'm wondering is, my area is up on the outskirts. Would this now be permissive that if somebody's got a 6-foot block wall, that they would be, if local entities put in the ordinances, where they would be allowed to put an electrified feature on top of, say, a 6-foot block wall to try to protect their pets from the coyotes?
Michael Pate with Amarok. And the answer to that is you can probably do it right now. You can go down to your local agricultural supply store and you can buy all the equipment right now, because these devices are all over.
I guess excuse me. I guess the question was, would this make it to where it would be legal to do that? Right now, yes, you can purchase that stuff at the agricultural center, but it is more than likely not legal right now to do that.
And this would not create a legality in a residential zone.
Assemblyman DeLong.
Thank you, Chair. two items. One is, with the amendment, I'm assuming these fences are still not allowed in residential zoning. And then how does this amendment affect the more, in the rural zoning where you've got agriculture and cattle fence? And how do those two relate?
This, AJ Delap, for the record, this is a security system, not a cattle or livestock control electric fence as we picture it on the open range. This is coupled with motion sensing of sorts, video activation, standoff wall. It is a security system meant to protect property. The livestock portion isn't within this. It's not in the preview of this. This is simply to provide permitting processes for commercial and industrial areas and certain rural residential areas for protection of property, not livestock control.
Assemblyman Gonzalez.
Chairs are all messed up today. Thank you so much. And thank you so much for the presentation. And I know we talked about, and I think I may have missed this, it's for residential and for what else? Just commercial. So my question, right, those two things. So my question is, do we foresee like governments using this in other entities, for example, like our state prisons, stuff like that?
Michael Pate with Amarok. Usually not. If you have a device in, say, a like high security prison, it's usually a lethal device. This is not a lethal device. So this is more of an alarm system, which has a shock component. You're just trying to keep people off of the property. If they happen to bully their way through it or figure out a way to go through it, the alarm goes off, and we go through a call list to make sure that we have a verified alarm. We know where the break-in was, who's there, then we call the police. So that's what it's for. It's really not used in prisons. I actually have one in a county jail, and the only reason it's there is to keep people from breaking in with contraband, oddly enough. So it's not to keep the low-level guys from getting out, it's to keep the folks from bringing contraband in. So oddly, I won't even mention the state it's in, so. You're welcome.
Any additional questions, members? We're fully charged today and ready to go. It doesn't look like there are any additional questions, but I might have some additional questions about the amendment after I'm able to kind of review that and continue this dialogue offline. At this time, I'll invite anyone wishing to testify in support of SB 208. I don't believe that I see any at this hearing, Carson City. BPS, is there anyone on the line wishing to testify in support of SB 208?
Chair, the line is open and working, but there are no callers choosing to provide support testimony at this time.
Thank you. At this time, I'll invite anyone wishing to testify in opposition to SB 208. I don't see any here in Carson City. BPS, is there anyone on the line wishing to testify in opposition to SB 208?
Chair, there are no callers choosing to provide opposition testimony at this time.
Thank you. At this time, I'll invite anyone wishing to testify neutral to SB 208.
Thank you, Chair, members of the committee. For the record, Mike Cathcart, representing the City of Henderson. We just wanted to thank Senator Flores, Mr. Delap, Mr. Pate for working with us on the conceptual amendment. With that amendment, that puts the City of Henderson in neutral. We would have been opposition with just the shall language, but we believe that amendment gets us here to neutral.
Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the committee. For the record, Cadence Matievich with Washoe County. We too are neutral on the bill and thank the bill sponsors and proponents for consideration of the proposed amendment. Washoe County was included in the conversations on that amendment, and I'd like to clarify a little bit of what our understanding is. Our understanding is that without that amendment, any fence that meets the definition as defined on page 3 of the bill for battery charged fence would not be allowed on a residential property.
that is designated exclusively for residential use. And we do believe that we have some existing uses on larger residential properties in our rural area that this would affect, and it would prevent it in the future without this amendment. And so we would ask for your consideration of that, and then also for clarification on the piece regarding properties under the governance of the Tahoe Regional Planning Area. We also believe that there are some instances where these fences are currently installed for purposes of bear deterrent on properties that maybe aren't necessarily as large. The zoning may not be rural, but because of the issue with bears in that area, we do think that there are some installations and would like to let those property owners be continued to have those on their properties. Thank you.
And I have a question. This is definitely a local government question. Would the exemption include or exclude like the rural zoning that exists in more urban areas?
For the record, Cadence Matievich, that's a hard question to answer. It would depend upon the zoning on the property. If the property is zoned as rural, then the exemption that the proposed amendment provides for would apply. If the property is not zoned rural, if it's zoned suburban or urban, even if it's low density, we don't believe that it would apply.
Thank you, and I apologize. It looks like we're fully energized today. So, Assemblyman DeLong.
Thank you. I have a very specific question for Washoe County. In the Huffacre foothill area, you've got lots of horse properties with low-level electric fences that don't have walls. Are those the areas you're talking about that could be affected by this bill?
For the record, Cadence Matievich, Madam Chair, through you to Assemblyman DeLong. So I think it depends upon whether or not that fence meets the definition as specified in the bill. It does require that, as I read the definition, it must also be connected to an alarm system. So I don't know whether or not those fences would meet that definition, but I will tell you, Assemblyman, that's exactly the area that we were thinking of when we brought forth this amendment. I mean, certainly there are areas more in the outskirts that it would apply to, but specifically the Huffacre Estates area was what came to mind immediately when we saw the bill.
And I'm concerned about that.
And a supplement, and maybe some clarification, is that because there's like wild Mustangs that are getting into these properties?
No, there are properties where people have horses, and then they have low-level electric fences around the properties so that the horses don't escape from their property.
Thank you. That definitely helps control the horse population. Thank you. I believe that's all the questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Nobody else knows what's going on in here. At this time, I don't see anyone here, anyone else wishing to testify neutral to SB 208. BPS, is there anyone on the line wishing to testify neutral to SB 208?
Chair, there are no callers choosing to provide neutral testimony at this time.
All right. At this time, I will invite the bill sponsors for any closing remarks. It doesn't appear that there are any. And we will go ahead and close the hearing on SB 208. We'll move on to the next item on our agenda, which is public comment. Is there anyone here in Carson City wishing to testify in public comment? I don't believe so. BPS, is there anyone on the line wishing to testify in public comment?
Chair, the line is open and working, but there are no callers choosing to provide public comment at this time.
And before we adjourn, members, any remarks? Well, I think it can't, we definitely have to note that, congratulations to the Assembly yesterday for winning our baseball game, or softball game, I apologize. I know very little about sports. And I actually think we had some star players on our team. We had Assemblywoman Angie Taylor, we had Assemblyman Koenig, I believe Assemblyman Carter. Anybody else that I missed that was playing in yesterday's game? No, you didn't play. You were just there.
If I may, Madam Chair, add a comment?
Yes, go ahead. Assemblyman Taylor.
I'm proud to announce that our colleague, Assemblyman Koenig, was actually awarded our team MVP for his prowess on the mound. So I'd like to put that on the record.
Congratulations, Assemblyman Koenig, on your Congratulations, Assemblyman Koenig, on your award. I know that you have been practicing all session just for that softball game. And we were incredibly impressed. We thought you were going to go pro, and we were a little concerned that we would lose you on this committee. But we're happy that you decided that you would put a pause on your professional career in order to continue with us here in the legislature. As a note to committee members and an early wishes of Happy Mother's Day for those of you that are going to be celebrating this Mother's Day. As a result of that, I am canceling our meeting for Monday the 15th. Maybe a little bit of extra time at home with your loved ones. And then we will have a meeting on Tuesday. As a heads up to the committee, I do expect that to be a longer meeting. We will be meeting at 9 a.m. and we will be hearing SB 90. So I expect that to be a pretty lengthy hearing. Any additional remarks? At this time, the meeting is adjourned.